Hi, I am Dr. Sai Prasad Reddy. Welcome to Software Testing Tutorial. In this session, we are going to discuss about defect reporting process. That means, as soon as the software test engineer has found the defect, immediately he has to report the defect to the development team. How to report the defect by the software test engineer? This concept we are going to discuss now. See, the defect reporting or the bug reporting, both are same because defect is also called as a bug. So, this defect reporting can be done in two ways. One is manual process, second one is by using tool. So, in manual process, in the majority cases, they will use Microsoft Excel sheet or rarely they will use MS Word document. If it is a tool, then the defect reporting tools will be used. Example for the defect reporting tools are Jira or Bugzilla, etc. There are so many tools that are available in the IT industry. So which process you have to use for reporting the defect? That will be decided by the management. So the management and your test manager and the development manager, they will sit together and they will decide whether to go for the manual process or by using the tool. Now I am going to explain about the manual process. How to report the defect in manual process. Now I am using Microsoft Excel sheet here, right? See, for reporting the defect by the concerned software test engineers, they will prepare the defect reporting document by using Excel sheet. All these are the fields for reporting the defect, right? Now, here, the defect reporting document by using Excel sheet will be designed by different way for different companies in different projects. But here I have included all the necessary fields for defect reporting. For the interview purpose, you have to prepare this defect reporting document, right? Now, the serial number, as you know very well about serial number 1, 2, 3, 4 will come. And the defect ID. See, what is this defect ID? As soon as the software test engineer finds the defect, immediately he has to report the defect by using this document. For each and every defect, the concerned software test engineer has to assign one ID number for the defect. That ID number should be unique and it should be a meaningful and it should be easily understandable. In this way, the software test engineer has to identify the ID number for each and every defect. Right? See now, for every defect, software test engineer has to assign the identification number, that is ID number. This ID number should be unique. That means for one defect, the one ID number. That the ID number cannot be used for the other defects. And it should be easily understandable. And also, it should be mapped to the feature or functionality in which defect has found. For example, if the software test engineer has found the defect in the login functionality, he has to assign the ID number for that defect as, example, login-001. This 001 is a unique ID number and the login is the name of the feature or the functionality in which the defect has found. So it should be a meaningful, that ID. Here see, once you see this ID number login-001 means, immediately anybody can understand that yes, the defect ID number is 001 and the feature or functionality is a login. That is, in login there is a defect. Like this. Clear? So, the next is reference. So, here you have to, software test engineer has to mention the reference for this defect. What will be the reference? In the majority cases, the reference will be the test case ID, because while executing the test cases by the software test engineers, that test case is passed, it is well and good. If the test case is failed, mean there is a defect. Right? So for example, here I have taken the login as an example. So while executing the login test cases, the software test engineer has found the defect. For each and every test case, there will be a test case ID number. For the login test case also, there will be a test case ID number. This test case ID has to be mentioned under the reference. Clear? See, this is the explanation. For every defect, software test engineer has to provide the reference. Generally, the reference will be a test case ID number. That is, while executing which test case, test engineer has found the defect. For example, for the login test case, the test case ID is TC-login01. This is the test case ID number. TC stands for test case hyphen the name of the functionality login01. Right? While executing this particular test case, the software test engineer has found the defect. Now, this test case ID number has to be provided under reference. Next, feature or functionality. Software test engineer has to mention in which feature or in which functionality he found the defect. He has to mention the name of that feature or functionality. Clear? For example, here the software test engineer has found the defect in the login functionality. He has to mention login as a feature or functionality here. Right? Defect description. This is very important column in the defect reporting document. So this defect description has to be provided by the concerned software test engineer. How to write this defect description? See, he has to write the defect description step by step, stating that how he found the defect. There should not be any ambiguity, that means confusion in the defect description. The defect description should be very clear and the defect description should be complete one. There should not be any missings or gaps while writing the steps of defect description. Based on this defect description only, the concerned developer will fix or will rectify that defect. So defect description is very important. Each and every software test engineer has to be carefully write this defect description. Right? So this is very important in defect reporting process. Test engineer has to provide the detailed step-by-step procedure stating that how he found the defect. Defect description should be very clear and easy to understand. There should not be any unnecessary narration. That means there should not be any unnecessary story. He has to write step by step, point by point. And there should not be any ambiguity. There should not be any confusion. By going through this defect description only, the concerned software developer will rectify this defect. This is very important. Clear? Next, defect reported by. That means who is reporting the defect? That means the software test engineer who has found the defect, he only will report the defect. So here the name of the concerned software test engineer has to be mentioned. The name of the concerned software test engineer has to be mentioned. And a defect reported on. That means on which date the software test engineer has reported this defect. Right? that date should be mentioned by the software test engineer. So that is defect reported by the name of the software test engineer who has found and reporting the defect. And the defect reported on, the test engineer has to provide the date on which the defect is reported. And the next field is status. Here, the status, what is the status? We have already discussed in the previous session about the different status in the bug life cycle. So the status will be like a new or assigned or open or fixed or closed or reopen or rejected or deferred or duplicate, like this, right? So the status of the defect has to be mentioned by the concerned person. Clear? But while reporting the defect first time by the particular software test engineer, the concerned software test engineer has to assign the status as a new. That is why the default status of the defect is new. It is very important in interview. In interview, they may ask you, for freshers, what is the default status of the defect? The default status of the defect is new. Clear? So, there is the concerned persons has to assign the status to the defect. Fine. Next, severity. See, the severity has to be assigned by the concerned software test engineer only. Concerned software test engineer is a responsible person to assign the severity level for the each and every defect. What do you mean by the severity? Severity is nothing but showing impact due to the presence of the defect in the application. What is the impact as the defect is present in the application, in the project? That is called severity. Generally, the severity levels, the different testing managers for the different projects, they will use the different severity levels. Here, Sev 1, Sev 2, Sev 3, Sev 4, Sev 5. That means severity 1, severity 2, severity 3, severity 4, severity 5. This is one set of severity levels. And other side, very high, medium, low, normal. These are one set of severity levels. Different test managers will use the different nomenclature for the severity levels. Some test managers, they will use Sev 1, Sev 2, Sev 3, Sev 4, Sev 5. Some test managers, they may use very high, medium, low, normal. So now, excuse me, you may get a doubt. Which set of severity levels that we are supposed to use for the project? This is also an interview question. This will be mentioned in your test plan document. Test plan is a high level document. In that test plan document, under the defect life cycle or under the defect reporting process, they will mention which severity levels that they are going to use for this project. By referring that document, test plan document, you have to assign the severity levels, set of severity levels which they are using. Now, so, in which criteria we have to assign the Sev 1? What is the criteria for Sev 2, Sev 3, Sev 4, Sev 5? The equivalent is very high, medium, low, normal. Under which criteria you have to assign the severity levels for the project? Different severity levels. That we will see now. This is very important concept for your interview and also for your real time. So as soon as you have deployed into the project, while reporting the defect to the concerned development team, nobody will come to your cubicle. That is, nobody will come to your seat and nobody will tell you about the criteria of the severity levels and which severity nomenclature that you are using. You have to refer your test plan documentation. Clear? Now, what is the criteria for assigning the Sev 1 for the defects? Now see, if due to the presence of the defect, listen to me carefully, this is very important. Due to the presence of the defect, it is showing a showstopper. What do you mean with a showstopper? Just it is stopping you. That means you cannot do testing. You cannot use the application at all as the defect is present. Just because of this defect is present, this defect is showing showstopper, or application is unusable because the defect is present. If the defect is removed, yes, application will be usable. Right? So, this entire application is unusable. Entire application is unusable means, in the perspective of testing process, the software test engineers cannot do testing. Serious impact to the user or serious impact to the testing team to test the application just because of this defect. The entire testing is halted. That means entire testing is stopped. Why? Because of this defect in the project. No workaround is available. Workaround, no workaround. That means there is no work at all for entire software testing team because entire testing is halted. No go condition. You cannot go forward for testing. That is called a no go condition. Why all these criteria? Just because of the defect that is present in the application. If that defect is rectified and if that defect is resolved by the developers, then this criteria will be closed. Yes or no? Right. Under this situation, you have to assign the sub 1 for the defect, or you have to assign very high for the defect. Next, save 2. Due to the presence of the defect, there is a significant impact on the application. That is, huge impact is there. Major system component inoperable. That means, say, major system functionalities are inoperable. We cannot operate because, say, example, for your better understanding, 80% of the system, 80% of the application is inoperable. We cannot use it. Why? Because the defect is present. If the 80% of this application is not usable means, the testing team can do only 20% of the testing. 80% they cannot do testing. Yes or no? Serious errors. Some testing is halted, but a workaround is available. How much workaround is available? Only 20% is available because of this presence of the defect. Rest of 80% is major system is inoperable. 80% of the system, 80% of the application cannot be tested. For these type of defects, you have to assign save 2. Save 3, small business impact. There is minor impact is there. Majority of the system is usable. For example, if the defect is present, some type of the defect is present, due to the presence of the defect, a small business impact is there. That means there is a small impact on the testing process. Majority of the system is usable. 95% of the system is usable. 95% of the system can be tested. The software test engineers happily they can do testing up to 95% of the functionalities in the application. Only 5% cannot be tested. Why? Because of this defect presence. For under this criteria, under this situation, under this condition, criteria is nothing but condition. For these conditions, you have to assign save 3 for the defect. Next is save 4. Inconsistency, cosmetic error, minor error does not need to be resolved before implementation. For these conditions, you have to assign save 4. Inconsistency, that means there is no uniformity, maybe in the alignment of the fields or in the alignment of the text or something. Cosmetic errors, minor errors. These defects these defects need not to be resolved. These type of defects need not to be fixed immediately. Whereas 7, they have to resolve immediately within hours. If it is a save 4, yes, they can take 3 to 4 days for resolving the defect. right? Save 5. It's a minor anomaly between expected results and actual results. Minor, very minor difference between expected results and actual results. Need not to be resolved before implementation. Need not to be resolved immediately. Even they can resolve these type of defects after implementation also. For these type of defects, the severity level will be assigned as Sev 5 or very normal. Right? So, this is about the severity levels. So, some companies they may use, some managers they may use Sev 1, Sev 2, Sev 3, Sev 4, Sev 5 as a group of this severity levels. Some managers they will use very high, medium, low, normal. Right? If Sev 1 means the defect is a 7 defect, immediately they have to fix the defect. Immediately they have to resolve the defect. If it is a Sev 4 or Sev 5, so they can take the time even after implementation also they can do fixing of the defect. If it is a Sev 3, they can take 3 to 4 days. If it is a Sev 2, they can take 1 or 2 days. Same, very high, medium, low, normal. Clear? This is about the severity levels. And the next is priority. The priority should be assigned by the software developer only. Software test engineer is not responsible for assigning the priority. So for each and every defect, the priority level will be assigned by the concerned software developer. What do you mean by the priority? Priority is nothing but giving importance. For what you have to give the importance? For fixing the defect. I will take one general example for your better understanding about the priority. Say, one common person, one common man, and one VIP, both have entered into the temple. For whom they will give the first priority? The first priority will be given for the VIP. That means giving importance. Here also the priority. See, the priority indicates the importance for fixing or rectifying the defect. That means it indicates how that defect has to be immediately rectified. Some defects they will give the P1 high priority. Those defects has to be rectified immediately. Right? If the defect is having a high priority, that defect will be fixed immediately. If the defect is having low priority, the defect will be fixed in 2, 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. Right? These priority levels will be assigned by the concerned software developer. Please keep it in mind. In interview, this is a question. What is the criteria for fixing the defect by the software developer? Either it is a severity or priority. It is only priority, not severity. Based on the priority level only, the software developer will fix the defects. Right? That's why the software developer is responsible for assigning the priority levels for the defect. In some projects, they will use P1, P2, P3. P1 is priority 1. That is the highest priority. Medium priority, priority 2, priority 3, low priority. Or for some projects, they may use this set of the priority levels: high, medium, low, like this. Clear? Yeah. Next, assigned to. That means this assigned to has to be filled by the concerned development lead, because the developer's lead has to assign this defect for fixing the defect. That means he will assign this defect to some developer for fixing. He will write the name of the concerned developer who is going to fix this defect. Fix it on, that means on which date the defect is fixed. Cycle, you have to mention the cycle number. What do you mean by the cycle concept? We have already discussed in earlier sessions. The cycle means, for example, I will take only the half minute. So, one application, it has to be tested in 3 cycles or 4 cycles or 5 cycles. Your manager will plan it. right? So depending upon the size of the project and the complexity level of the project, the cycle numbers will vary. So for example, for one project, if your manager has decided to go for 3 cycles of testing, in cycle 1, if you have found the defect, then you have to write the cycle 1. In cycle 2, you have found the defect, you have to write the cycle 2. In cycle 3, you have to found the defect, then you have to write cycle 3, like this, right? Next, remarks. If any remarks is there with respect to this particular defect, the persons, either he may be a software development team or he may be from software testing team, they will write the remarks, right? So, see, assigned to the development lead has to mention the name of the concerned software developer to whom the defect is assigned for fixing. Fixed on the date he has to mention on which date the concerned developer has fixed the defect. Cycle number, you have to mention the cycle number. The software test engineer has to mention the cycle number. Remarks, if any remarks are there, if any comments are there with respect to this particular defect, they immediately, either the software testing team members or the software developers, they will write the remarks in the software reporting template document. Defect reporting document, right? This is the defect reporting document. Going forward, in the next session, I will take one example and I will write one defect reporting. I will take one example, common example like login or something. Then we will write and we will learn how to write the defect reporting, right? So, please subscribe my channel. Share my videos to all the students and students community or students groups who are searching for the job in the IT industry for software testing position. And like my sessions and please raise your comments in the comment box. Thank you very much.